Live taping of our podcast, The Maritime Nation. So the podcast has been in effect now for 3 years. This is the third time that we've done a live, both video and audio podcast at Sea Air Space. We're actually not taping now because I want to give you a little bit of an idea of what to expect for the next hour. We have a couple of distinguished guests today, and Sanjana Shashikumar from Core Power, and we have John Konrad from gCaptain, who has enormous experience in the maritime domain. If you're wondering about a disconnect on your program, Dr. Jerry Hendricks and Dan Pedrati were going to be here, and 2 nights ago, Jerry emailed me and told me that the president has not signed Executive Order number 3, which deals with shipbuilding and commercial shipbuilding, and that he told his staff he would prefer that he be the one to roll it out and nobody else. So Jerry understood, being a good Navy captain, time to say we'll have to delay. And we've been promised that as soon as that executive order is signed, we'll be taping another issue of Maritime Nation with Dr. Hendricks. So these two are heroes because on very short notice, they agreed to come in and fill in, and I think you're gonna find it to be a very rewarding session. We'll talk a little bit about our new book, Returning from Ebb Tide, but most of the time, I think you're gonna hear some great stories and some sea stories today. So the way this will work is we'll go through about 45 minutes of questions and answers and discussion from our 2 guests, and then we'll go to audience Q&A. And I think, we have a mic right in the center there, so if you have a question and you cue at the mic, when I call for questions and answers, we'd be delighted to take your question and offer it to our 2 guests. I'm going to introduce Ms. Gabby Moran, who really needs no introduction. She is from our sponsor, who sponsors Maritime Nation and has done so for over 2 years now. Gabby was my executive assistant, chief of staff at the Center for Maritime Strategy when we started. Like me, she's a plank owner. She's a very intelligent young woman from American University. She worked at the Center for European Policy Analysis, how we met when I was a fellow. And Gabby is now with Data Miner, which is across the street from the Center for Maritime Strategy, so we still get to see her. And she's here representing her company today, and she's going to give you a few remarks about what Data Miner does. And I tell you, it's a fantastic company that's on everybody's cell phone who's in the Department of Defense, and it gives you situational awareness of all unclassified events happening around the world. And it's sometimes better than our J2, our intelligence community. So without any further ado, Gabby, floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see so many friendly faces in the audience today, and thank you, Admiral Foggo, for the kind introduction. It's great to be back at Sea Air Space again, and I'm especially happy to be here in my capacity at Data Miner. And Data Miner is honored to sponsor the Center for Maritime Strategy's podcast. We sponsor the annual season, but we're really grateful to take part in the live recording every year. As Admiral Foggo mentioned, it's our 3rd year participating. And in previous years, Admiral Foggo has engaged guests ranging from CBS's David Martin to Rear Admiral John Kirby to last year we hosted P.W. Singer here. I'll note that Data Miner's partnership with the Center for Maritime Strategy allows us to leverage the insights from the Center's experts and research so that we can better support our Department of Defense clients. And by providing lifetime information and real-time event alerting using and harnessing artificial intelligence, Data Miner enables better and faster decision-making for leaders across the Department of Defense. From the mock floor to the individual sailor to the service chief, Data Miner's first alert is used to protect U.S. personnel, infrastructure, and security. We look forward to today's recording, and thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Gabby. Okay, I think we're recording, and if we can have the intro music. Hello, everyone. This is Admiral Jamie Foggo from the Center for Maritime Strategy at the Navy League of the United States, just outside Washington, D.C. You're listening to Maritime Nation, the Center for Maritime Strategy's podcast designed to dive deeply into the policy challenges facing America's sea services and the role of the United States as a sea power on the global stage. Thank you to Data Miner for sponsoring Season 4 of Maritime Nation. Now, we're here at Sea, Air, Space, the best symposium on the maritime domain in the country, in April of 2025 at the National Harbor and the Gaylord Hotel. We're honored today to be joined by Sanjana Shashikumar and John Konrad. Sanjana is the Senior Regulatory Analyst at Core Power, where her work focuses on engagement within the nuclear and marine regulatory environment across international, federal, and industry stakeholders. Core Power is a technology and marketing company which funds and builds scalable new nuclear technology solutions for ocean transport and heavy industry. Their core design activities span nuclear, marine, and safety engineering, regulatory standards development, and project deliveries. Before her current role at Core, she worked in the U.S. House of Representatives and in the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. You may know it by the acronym OSCE. Captain John Konrad is the founder and CEO of gCaptain, helping it become the world's most popular maritime news website with a record-breaking 2 million monthly page views. He is the author of the book, Fire on the Horizon, and a contributor to the Center for Maritime Strategy's new book, which I have right here, Returning from Ebb Tide. Let us know if you want a copy. We did a book signing yesterday, and first edition print is out. We're in the second edition now. John is licensed to captain the world's largest ships and has sailed from numerous ports around the world. John has built some of the world's most advanced ships and managed billions of dollars of offshore construction projects in some of the world's harshest marine environments. John is a distinguished alumnus of New York Maritime College. It's an honor to have you both. Welcome to Maritime Nation.
Thank you, Admiral.
John, you're probably the most influential commentator on maritime issues, shipping, and logistics. You have a lot of experience at sea, and you have some incredible sea stories. And we were talking about this last night, ladies and gents, and this one I didn't know, and it blew me away. And I've asked John to relate the story to you today. John, tell us about your experience with the taking of Maersk, Alabama, and Captain Phillips, the movie featuring Tom Hanks that chronicled one of the most famous incidents of piracy on the high seas. You were one of the first guys notified.
We broke the story, and the Merchant Marine didn't have a Naval Institute proceedings. Lloyd's List and Tradewinds cost thousands of dollars to subscribe to, and the average mariner didn't have it. So, you know, the mariners loved it very quickly. And I'm at home in my office. At that time, we were in California, and I get this text from another U.S. flagship in the Indian Ocean, and they said, "We got a security alert from the Maersk, Alabama." So like a bank, there's a button you press if there are pirates. And if it's an emergency, you press the button, and most people accidentally press the button, and there are no details in that. But what was unusual this time is they took the time to go in the GMDSS computer, the satellite notifications, and put in some details about the pirates and the ship number. That takes time. It wasn't an accident. So I open up the ITU ship publication, I look up Maersk, Alabama, I take the satellite number, and I put it in Skype, and I call them up. And
you just called them up from your cell phone?
Yeah, from Skype. It was Skype.
Yes. Yeah.
And I get rings, and it says Maersk, Alabama, mate on watch. And I say, "Hey, this is John Konrad with gCaptain." And the mate goes, "Oh, I love gCaptain, but we're a little bit busy right now. I can't talk." And I said, "Are the pirates on board?" And he goes, "Yes." And I said, "Are they pointing guns at you?" And he said, "Yes." And I'm like, "I'm so sorry here. I'll hang up the phone and I'll write up the story." So I published it to gCaptain. Half an hour later, Daily Beast, Huffington Post, they all call me and they say, "Did you talk to the Maersk, Alabama?" I said, "Yes, I did." They said, "Can we have their phone number?" I'm like, No, these guys are under attack from pirates. They can't be handling media calls. 2 hours later, it was NPR, New York Times, CNN, same question. Did you talk to Maersk, Alabama? Yes. Can we have their phone number? Absolutely not. I'm not giving it out to any media. Well, 3 hours later, Admiral, I get this phone call. This is Naval Intelligence in the Pentagon. Is this Captain John Konrad? And I don't know. I pick up looking out my window for the black NCIS van. I thought I was going to be in big trouble.
Coming to roll you up.
Yeah. And they said, no, we just wanted to know if you had their phone number so we can call them. So I gave NCIS the phone number, and they called the SEAL teams, and we were able to break that story.
Yeah, famous story from the Expeditionary Strike Group with one of my old bosses and a classmate of Admiral Richardson, who's out here, Admiral Michelle Howard.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I remember she said one of the highlights of her life was sitting next to Tom Hanks for the screening of the movie. And yeah, so what had happened at the time that you called the mate? Were you able to kind of do a timeline? I mean, where was Captain Phillips? Was he still on board? Had he been taken away? Were they down in some secure room or what?
Yeah, this was only the second time that a ship had fought back against the pirates. So usually, as we were taught prior to 9/11 on aircraft, you just comply with orders. But there have been a number of foreign flag ships taken, and they weren't treating the crews very well, and it was a dangerous situation. A Chinese ship had tried to get the pirates off by locking all the doors and making Molotov cocktails, throwing them down at the pirates, and they scurried away. But we don't have a bar on U.S. flagships. It's illegal, so there's no flammable material. So they split up the crew, and the pirates had to go and chase them in the engine room, and they hid out and fought back. And the captain eventually said, "I'm the valuable one, Captain Phillips. Take me." And the pirates were bad about, they did not want to get attacked more. There were some injuries and everything else. And they said, these Americans will defend our ships, as the Merchant Marine always did. So Captain Phillips convinced the pirates to go out on the lifeboat, and then they saving the ship and the crew, which sailed to Africa.
Wow, what a story. That's great, John. Thanks for sharing that with us. And you just think about serendipity, getting that note and following up. And it just goes to show that you're a merchant marine captain of unlimited tonnage. However, you're a great beat reporter, too. So thanks for that. And who knows if that made a difference in the ability to react to that call and might have saved lives. You've all seen the movie. You know that the pirates were taken down and several of them were killed. Okay, let's get back to the topic du jour, which is commercial maritime shipbuilding and advocacy. John, there's been an explosion of interest in this with the SHIPS Act and also with the Shipbuilding Office at the National Security Council, headed by Dr. Jerry Hendrickson Bennett. And I think it's a renaissance of, or a political awakening to the importance of what you and the Merchant Marine actually do. But what brought this about? Why do you think this is happening now? Why is this a top 5 priority for President Trump?
Right, so going back to World War II, the Navy, the Merchant Marine, the Coast Guard, and the Marine Corps were under the Navy. And when the DOD was set up, Army split off from Air Force, but they kind of got 2 votes against the Army, the Navy's 1 vote, right? So how the Navy survived that is they say, we can't use our budget for the Merchant Marine, Coast Guard, and we're gonna cast you off on your own. Marine Corps had very influential senators, congressmen who fought back. Coast Guard decided to be military. Merchant Marine decided we're going to team up with Wall Street and go up. And we sort of parted ways. There's been some confusion between it. Military Sea Lift Command is run by merchant mariners, and the Navy has been hiring more merchant mariners. But the two communities don't talk very well. And I knew a lot of naval guys, and I'd been advocating, along with some others, we got to get on the same team right now. And Admiral Foggo, you started the Center for Maritime Strategy. That was a big initial part. You had Brent Sadler at Heritage doing revolution in shipping. And then Bruce Kimbrough was in Admiral Gilday's office, a Navy intel officer, and transitioned to Waltz's team in Congress. And a bunch of us got together, commercial guys like me, Sal Mercogliano, Craig Hooper's another one, and sat down with the Navy guys and said, how can we work together? And that was, Sal Mercogliano really got me interested in this like 5 years ago, saying the reason China has such a powerful Navy is because they're investing in commercial yards. They're building the factories that do the machining, the equipment, the building the engines, and then they're using that for Navy shipbuilding. And I said, that's interesting, Sal. He started writing for gCaptain. And then, but it was really your team and the Navy guys, Bruce Kimbrough, Brent Sadler, Jerry Hendricks, coming together and saying, how do we work together? And then once that group, and we got rid of all past animosities and confusions and get down to the facts. We can work together jointly and do incredible things. And I had very little part in it, but through Waltz's team, and he's Army, I think that helped.
Yeah, Special Forces, I think. Yeah.
And an Army guy, how it says this is important to all the Army guys in Congress. And that joint collectiveness, I think the ball just started rolling until it got the attention of some big media, some big people on both sides of the aisle, Mark Kelly, Carlos Del Toro on one side, and then Mike Waltz and Donald Trump himself wants to, you heard the second half today say, Trump says shipbuilding, shipbuilding, shipbuilding. So once you got that high level, I think the ball started rolling, and then friends of ours started getting calls like Brent Sadler, potentially going to MARAD, Jerry Hendricks, Ian Bennett in the thing, and I think that's how it started.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for the rundown, John. And let me turn to Sanjana now. You work for Core Power, which advocates for renewal of nuclear propulsion in commercial vessels at sea. And believe it or not, folks, we have had U.S. commercial vessels powered by nuclear propulsion. There's a civilian ship, which I learned about back in 1981 in nuke school, called the NS Savannah, which stands for Nuclear Power Ship Savannah. It's actually in Baltimore Harbor as kind of a museum now. Mm-hmm. So Sanjana, tell us about that ship and tell us about the value of nuclear propulsion for civilian and maritime shipping.
Yeah, so the Savannah, the nuclear ship Savannah, was part of President Eisenhower's Atoms for Peace movement, and it was focused around demonstrating the peaceful use of nuclear energy. To do that you need to bring it around the world. You bring it to everyone. So the Savannah entered 75 ports, traveled 450,000 nautical miles. 45 of those ports were foreign ports, actually. And the Savannah was able to demonstrate safe use in ports, port calls, port guidance. Over 1.7 million people visited the Savannah through this journey. And it was able to demonstrate the peaceful use of nuclear in the maritime industry. Now we're looking at a new technology. We're looking at advanced nuclear reactors to build on the legacy that the Savannah has demonstrated to be the catalyst for the commercial maritime industry. So to reinvigorate and provide new solutions to a lot of the challenges that we're facing that John outlined in particular, especially here in the United States.
Fantastic. And John mentioned the White House's nominee, presumptive nominee, to be the administrator of the United States Maritime Administration, MARAD, and that's Brent Sadler. Mm-hmm. Brent's a personal friend. He's a Navy captain. I think with a little tongue-in-cheek, John was telling me he's a submariner, not a merchant marine guy, but that's okay, because he's a really good guy. He's also an Olmsted Scholar, which is a foundation that I belong to. We send officers all over the world to learn a foreign language and get a degree in a foreign university. So he is acculturated to foreign cultures, extremely well-educated. And he was a beat reporter himself. I think he worked for the Washington Post at one time, but just a great guy. And so I couldn't think of a better person to be nominated for this position. In returning from Ebb Tide, he brings up, the idea of small modular reactors as opportunities and efficient ways of, putting propulsion on a commercial ship, probably going from, you heat up steam and you go to a turbine and you can turn electric drive. It's actually very energy efficient. It's also good for the climate. Mm-hmm. It reduces the carbon footprint. we have experimented with these small modular reactors or molten salt reactors in the past. Admiral Rickover was one that used to say to his people, don't bring me paper reactors. I don't want to see the design. I want you to actually go build something and prototype it. That was refreshing, you know, and sometimes I think we need to be reminded of that. So he would build these different kinds of prototypes. I was on one myself when I was XO, the USS Narwhal. It was a completely unique propulsion plant. Can't really tell you much about it here. This is classified, but it was pretty cool. And he built that one ship and then decided not to mass produce it, and he went on with the 688 class submarine. But molten liquid salt reactors reacts with Inconel stainless steel, and causes corrosion. So he let it go. But now the technology is much improved.
Yes.
And the technology, there's, the elephant in the room, you have to face a stigma associated with events like 3 Mile Island. But we're moving through that. We need SMRs for propulsion at sea. We also need it because everybody has a huge appetite for data and data centers.
Yes.
And, they burn up a lot of energy, right? So how do we get over the hump, and how do we get these things out into the fleets and operational?
That's a great question. I think changing public opinion is going to be a significant part of how we deploy this technology. I would say the primary answer is a demonstration. So the United States is the leader and has always been the leader of nuclear energy, and we're not building PowerPoint reactors. We're not building paper reactors. We are building ones that can be demonstrated. And there's support, like you said, from the government on the commercial shipping side. We also are looking for support from the Department of Energy to help facilitate the development of these technologies. And again, the way you get over public opinion is demonstration. You prove that it works, you prove that it's safe, you build the trust in the public that it can be demonstrated safely. A personal anecdote that I like to share is that my parents were on a nuclear-powered vessel for commercial purposes, and they went to the North Pole, and they came back and said, nuclear technology in maritime is very safe. They learned about the technology, they saw the demonstration, and I thought that this was a very common practice, seeing people close to me experience proven safe demonstration. So we need to do that now with the new technology, because the new technology offers significant advantages, especially compared to the pressurized reactors of the Savannah or the nuclear Navy. There's this distinctions that create walkaway safety to make it commercially insurable, to make these reactors able to enter ports, and again, demonstrate the safety and gain public opinion, and change public opinion to allow them to be deployed.
Yeah, and I think the founder of Core Power, Mr. Bo, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's Norwegian.
Yes.
He came in to brief us a couple of years ago, which sparked our interest in this. And the safety struck me as, just master the obvious. I mean, the problem with something like 3 Mile Island and a pressurized water reactor is that pressure is going to, on a rupture of a containment facility, release fission products to the atmosphere. Same thing with Chernobyl. But these SMRs are operating at such low temperatures and pressures that you don't really have to worry about that. Right? If you had a breach, you easily contain it. Yeah.
So when you're looking at it, it's called the emergency planning zone, and that's the zone around which the reactor you need to prepare for emergency preparedness. With the reactors operating at this ambient pressure, that zone shrinks. And at this point, we're designing them to be ideally within the hull of the vessel itself, so that you can take the reactor around, transport it, use it for propulsion, use it for floating nuclear power plants, and you don't provide any risk to the surrounding area. That also then allows it to be commercially insured, which is crucial for the commercial industry.
And they're easy to refuel, right?
Sorry, can you
Easy to refuel.
Yes. So in fact, actually, the reactor that we're looking at in particular, the molten chloride fast reactor, the lifetime for it to be refueled can match the lifetime of a vessel. So the refueling that you're looking at.
So are we talking 20 years, or is that right? Wow.
So the time saved and the requirements saved, it can run for the lifetime of the ship.
That's John's opening his eyes over there. That's attractive. Thank you, Sanjana. Let's go back to the Ships for America Act and the Shipbuilding Office and the National Security Council. There's just a lot of energy from the highest levels of government, from the president on down towards shipbuilding. John, I've read through the SHIPS Act. I mean, we had an opportunity. Dr. Steve Wills was in that working group with you. We had an opportunity to comment on the draft. We do this annual program called Congressional Maritime Intensive for professional staffers on the Hill who want to learn more about the Navy, and we bring them to the Center for Maritime Strategy in recess time in August. And I thought they'd all want to be on vacation. No, while the members are gone, they have time to do things that they want to do. And so we've packed a house with about a 30-person classroom. And we do 2 days in-house, and then we take them down to Newport News Shipbuilding. We show them, as a guest of the shipyard, we show them the 688 modernization. We show them new construction, Virginia-class submarines, the payload module, and then the magnificent facilities that make the nose cone and stern sections for the Columbia-class. And so 2 of those staffers went back to their boss, Senator Kelly, and said, hey, these guys are pretty good guys. So he accepted an invitation to come to our America's Future Fleet symposium in December of 2023, and he table dropped the SHIPS Act. It was a big surprise. He asked if there were going to be press there, and I was amazed that with Congressman Walz, now the National Security Advisor, it only took a year to get this thing out and almost approved and going. It says we're gonna increase our inventory of commercial ships to 250. We're going to have a maritime czar. We're going to do tax incentives. We will have subsidies, and we'll talk a little later about subsidies. But what do you like, John, about these 2 initiatives, the Shipbuilding Office and the SHIPS Act for America? What do you think is the most promising, and how is it going to help your industry?
I think most promising is the fact that we are a maritime nation with maritime history. We wrote a lot of the laws and the conventions for the international world order. And we have some of the best naval and maritime schools in the country, whether it's Kings Point or my own New York Maritime Academy or Naval Academy, Naval Postgraduate School. John Boyd said, people, then ideas, and technology. We had to, with this group, get the Navy together. I forgot about the Coast Guard. Will Cahill has been pushing naval arc, the nuclear, from the beginning of the working group. Jim Watson at ABS started up a nuclear group at ABS. Yes. And it's really about listening to each of these people. The Navy guys had a very different outlook of what they needed, what we needed, the Coast Guard needed, and how do you tap into those opportunities without just throwing more money at the problem. And the Navy's got a big budget, but they are the customer. It's the Maritime Administration, which has the connections to Wall Street. You're talking to the yards, and these are private companies that have financial balance sheets. And there's this misnomer that, the shipyards are making all of this money. But then you look at VT Halter, for example, was bought by a Singaporean company. They bought the yard. They put in $400 to $500 million in development. They had $8 to $9 billion in government contracts, namely the icebreaker. And the foreign company got so frustrated with the red tape and the government process and not having the right people at the table that they sold the entire yard for $16 million, with an M.
Saw that.
And this is talking to the bankers, and they say, well, we don't need you to throw more cash and go from a $9 billion contract to 15. What we need is access to Wall Street capital. Whether a lot of these Wall Street, we are the 4th largest provider of capital to the maritime world at large. There are over 50,000 merchant ships in the world. We're number 3 or 4. And that capital goes to foreign countries, which are often building in China. How do we get them to come to us? And what Wall Street really says is we need to lower risk. If we put money in a public shipyard and it fails, could that become a public yard? Ideas like that. And a lot of those ideas didn't get into the bill because we wanted to keep it streamlined. What are the tax incentives? Can we do maritime prosperity zones? Can we put nuclear in there? Not that there's much in there that really throws money at nuclear, but just that demand signal from prominent congressman, a prominent senator, and hopefully signed by the president.
Yep.
Shows that leadership that we care about nuclear, we care about the technology, we care about the industrial base.
Fantastic. Sanjana, anything on that?
Yeah, I think I'll add that the aspect of nuclear propulsion is incredibly important. It's great to see this interest and this movement from the government, but nuclear can be a significant part of this movement, and seeing the direction and the pull also from that side and the energy side will be very important. I will say that there is also, in the Code of Federal Regulations, there is the support for the maritime civil nuclear propulsion programs. That's 15 CFR 744.5. And it also goes out to create this distinction between naval. So again, highlighting the importance that it is already the policy of the United States to support maritime nuclear propulsion. Bringing that together, bringing that forward in these can help bring it all together.
Outstanding, thank you. Let me turn to the question of foreign direct investment and foreign direct investments play in expanding the maritime industrial capacity of the United States. So the Center for Maritime Strategy was invited to Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. I'd actually never been inside the yard, John, and I was just hugely impressed by the footprint. There's a lot of space. I mean, there's a steel laydown area where, you're basically looking over the horizon. There's tons of space, which is what we need for expansion. And the group that invited us was Tote Services. They are a VCM, or a vessel construction manager, the interlocutor between the government, which in this case was MARAD, building the national security multi-mission vessel for our merchant marine academies, the state and national merchant marine academies. So these were magnificent vessels, and they're pumping them out on time and on budget, more or less, within a couple percentage points. And that's really unheard of. Hanwha bought that shipyard for $100 million. And so there may be opportunity for foreign direct investment in other places that might be able to do the same thing. What do you think?
I think it's excellent. I worked for a year and a half at Samsung Heavy Industries in Korea, building BP's most technologically advanced drill ship at the time. It was almost $1 billion when said and done. Also at Samsung, I believe it was Samsung, it might have been Hanwha, they built the Shell Prelude, which is the largest ship ever built. It's an LNG FPSO. So this goes where the oil rig is, and when we don't have pipelines, the LNG, the natural gas, comes up, and they have freezing facilities on there to turn into liquid gas. Natural gas, yeah. Natural gas, frozen, and then they take shuttle tankers and bring it. But this ship was $20 billion, and the Korean yards are 4 to 5 times more efficient than American yards. So a $20 billion ship built there is really, $80 to $100 billion ship here. But here's the thing, Admiral, a lot of that design, the project work, was done by the oil major Shell in Houston. We have this expertise, and this is what we hope to tap some of these. It was a Webb graduate in Long Island, naval architecture, who was working on that project I talked to. And then the Koreans are very good at logistics. And there are all these myths. They say, well, American workers get paid more. That's not the case. They're pretty comparable. And they say, well, it's a union problem. Well, no, they have pretty contentious protests in Korea when they're a union. And you can go down all of this, and what it comes down to is government support, and then they also put a lot of value in zero change orders, the logistics of ships, and adaptability. This is something I talk to the Marine Corps a lot, because the maneuver warfare thing, if they have a problem, they don't just throw more money and time at it, they move around, and that is all pivoted around the schedule. Because if you have a delay of schedule, all those parts back up. Shipbuilding is very easy at the thing. You need basically 3 things. You need somewhere to assemble the ship and lay down all the spare parts. You need a crane to pick it up, and you need a dry dock. And everyone says, we don't have dry docks in this country. Well, in 2013-14, Samsung ran out of dry docks. They brought in floating dry docks, which, by the way, are great salvage efforts. If you read Admiral Ellsberg's book, World War II, Under the Red Hot Sun, and that's something else that we have to look at here. It's not just the building and getting this expertise and getting the culture right, but the protection of the little assets that we have. So until we can ramp up shipbuilding, do we have the salvage assets? Do we have the fireboats in San Diego to put out fires if we're attacked? So that's another question in this that's still trying to be figured out, Admiral.
Fantastic. All the gears and wires are turning in my head here as you're talking, and that was terrific information, particularly the shell piece, manufactured, in Texas, but still relevant to get overseas and be a part of that platform. Sanjana, anything on FDI?
So Core Power, we just launched our Liberty program, and that's the ecosystem that we're working on to develop all of the standards surrounding floating nuclear, and part of that will include American shipyards. We are looking at bringing in the foreign investments that we have, and we're hoping to find American companies to step up as well, because the focus needs to be on commercial shipbuilding capability. It's my understanding that currently some of the foreign investments now are still focused on the lucrative side for naval shipbuilding, and it needs to be recentered to commercial. And that's something that our program is working on, to develop the shipbuilding capabilities, to develop shipyards, as well as this ecosystem that surrounds all the standards for safety and security for floating nuclear. They need to be nuclear-grade shipyards that create these fast, high-quality, gold standard, superior nuclear-powered vessels. And that can be where the commercial shipbuilding capability can thrive.
That's fantastic. So good luck with that, and keep us posted on your progress. As John was talking, I was reminded we've been given a modest grant to do a study over the course of the next year that's entitled the Allied Maritime Industrial Base. People are really interested in this. So it's a series of case studies, and we haven't nailed down exactly which countries, but I'll tell you what we're thinking of. We're thinking of Italy, France, and particularly France. If they're going to build a new aircraft carrier, that'll be low-rate production, which is very expensive. Sweden and Finland. Sweden, because of Saab and Kockum's a big part of their industrial base. They're here in this country. And Finland, because of their ability to turn out a really impressive icebreaker for about 250 million euros. So fraction of the cost that we can do that. Ours are bigger and break thicker ice. I get it, but the Healy unfortunately caught fire last summer. She's out of commission, and we had to lease an icebreaker for the Coast Guard to give them that medium icebreaker capability. We're also looking at South Korea and Japan, two powerhouses in the maritime industrial base and the shipping industry, and they compete with China. And as you said, John, at 1, 2, 3, 4, China, Japan, South Korea, I don't know which is second and third, and then the US is further down the line. And we're also looking at Australia and the UK. We're partnering with Jane's Defense on this. They're very interested, and we got some access to information which will be very helpful. So by this time next year, hopefully that study will be complete, and we'll have a report and we can talk to you about it. Shifting gears. One of the things in the SHIPS Act, there are foreign practices. We're all talking about tariffs now, so there is some cheating out there on the international stage. China subsidizes most of its commercial ship construction. They have 5,600 Chinese-flagged vessels, to our very small number. How many do we have, John?
We have about 80 in international service, apart from the Jones Act fleet.
Yeah, 80, so 5,680. We're outnumbered, 6 ways from sundown. But they subsidize, and we stopped doing that during the Ronald Reagan administration. That was a Republican GOP thing. We're not going to subsidize. The SHIPS Act wants to get us back into subsidies. Do you think that's a good idea, and is it going to help us against the enormous numbers that China is producing?
Mark Levinson wrote the iconic book, The Box, about the advent of container shipping.
Great book, yeah.
And John McCowan's in it with with Malcolm McLean and the building of Sealand. His second book didn't get as popular. It's Outside the Box, but he looks at the industrial policies, the subsidies, and the conclusion he comes to is every single country that's been a successful Naval Power and Shipbuilder has done subsidies. The question is, how do you perform those subsidies? Some countries, we did it ourselves, differential subsidies, where we say, hey, it's more expensive here, so we'll make up the cost. But other nations have done other things, particularly industrial policy. You have Korea, Japan. We won't put as much right into the ship owner's hand, but we're going to put a lot of loans into the secondary engine manufacturers and the welders and the machine shops. Germany's a very famous example. They became #1 in finance because they said, hey, this is a great for an IRA. They came up with an IRA or 401k program, which let people put money into ships directly in their investment. And it was a great investment because how ship finance works is you lose a ton of money for 10 or 15 years, and then you have a banner year where you make back all the profits and more. So they were able to deduct their taxes for 10 years and then do their profits. The Navy did war bonds, so that's distributed subsidies by public or IRAs. And these are the questions, and this is what's exciting about BlackRock just announced. China, has taken over Hong Kong and now Hutchinson ports. They're on either side of the Panama Canal. It's a big issue. BlackRock has come in and say, well, we have all these 401ks and IRA money, and how can we do good with that for the country and the broader ecosystem? The thing with China, though, is very interesting. They're doing all of the above. They're giving direct money to ship owners. They're giving, putting it various subsidies, but industrial policy as well, that it is a priority. And why do they do this? You have to understand the impact of maritime trade. The estimates are global trade is $45 to $70 trillion with a T every year. 90% of trade is on ships. And this ties right into the financial system. I was very excited when Scott Bessent, our new Treasury Secretary, said he is spending 40 to 50% of his time on national security issues. And then he goes and talks about the Red Sea and the Panama Canal. And what that does is if you just take money and put it in a building, it's stagnant. But that money that changes hand with trade as a ship moves to the Red Sea and it goes from one owner to another, the cargo, that provides liquidity into the system. And that liquidity gives us the global reserve. So when you say the Navy's protecting the reserve currency and our financial status in the Red Sea, it's very physical movement of goods. And this is what, the next step of China knows all this. And China reads Mahan. And where have they focused this investment? They focused it on the choke points. They focused it in the International Maritime Organization in the UN. And they are very sneaky about this. So everyone wants to decarbonize, right? This is very exciting. Everyone in shipping, the ship owners are very excited about it. They're very excited about nuclear.
Yep.
China says, hey, we're going to do a global tariff and we're going to give money to the ships that are struggling. But where are all those ships going to go to get nuclear power, to get hydrogen, to get methane? And the UN can provide funding for research. Well, China has the only available shipyard. So all of that investment goes into China as a capacity. When China figures out nuclear and hydrogen and methane, they're going to switch it to naval production, as we've seen. They take the commercial yards, they perfect the technology, and then they build warships. So it seems like it's something really good, but if we haven't think of it, because we've abandoned it, we don't have a full-time ambassador to the International Maritime Organization. So the question is now, how do we help the world? And Europe really wants decarbonization and green and everything else, but how do we use our industry? And that's what's exciting about nuclear is we have the experts here that can participate.
I think I'll just say that I don't think it's realistic to think that we can become cost competitive with China. And so what it needs to be is a new product. And China is doing this. Like you said, they're looking at nuclear. They're looking at these alternative fuels. The good thing is on the nuclear side, we are ahead of the game. We are 10 years ahead in the technology development. And so it just needs to come from, we just need to bring the maritime side back to where we're developing the technology to deploy it first. So we can be the leaders. The United States can be the ones who are making these nuclear-powered ships that are leading decarbonization, but also mitigating a lot of the challenges that the maritime industry is facing when it comes to fuel cost, fuel supply, volatility. port electrification, power to ports, the United States can be the leader. It's not realistic to think that we can be competitive without a new product, without this new technology. And we are leading, we need to follow through. I think that that's what my big takeaway has been.
Absolutely. I mean, both of your comments sparked a number of things in my head. First of all, China has a strategy. Part of that strategy is One Belt, One Road. John, as you were talking about the BlackRock deal in Panama, I think that's a really good deal for us, and we need to pursue it and make sure that it goes to completion so that we can actually have U.S. interests running those ports on both sides of the Panama Canal and alleviate some of that tension that you saw come up in the first part of the Trump administration. But China's One Belt, One Road, quite frankly, has been very successful. You know, we've seen them establish a base in Gwadar, Pakistan. I was Commander Naval Forces Europe and Africa while they built and poured concrete for 3 years right next to our base in the Horn of Africa, Camp Lemonnier. They built a base called Dorley. It now has a carrier pier that's got frigates and destroyers in there, and they can bring the Yao Ning or the Fujian, their aircraft carriers, in and anchor as they prepare to go up and through the Suez or back, you know, to mainland China. They've also established somewhat of control over the port of Piraeus. And when I think about that, I think about Plato's Republic in the first line. I went down to the sea in ships in by the Piraeus from Cephalus. I wonder what he would feel like today knowing that the Chinese were pretty much running that port. And I remind my Greek friends that you invented the Trojan horse, but you have now invited it into the port of Piraeus, and beware of what happens after that. So, foreign direct investment, we talked about that. We talked about subsidies. I'm all for subsidies. We're at the 13 minutes to go point here, so I want to get to audience questions. I have one last question for both of you, and that is, of all the things that we've discussed here today, what's the number one issue regarding commercial maritime industry that keeps you up at night? And Sanjana, we'll start with you.
Oh. I think the thing that the number one challenge is that we have everything that we need, we just need to put it together. I think in the commercial industry in particular, like I said, we are leading in the technology, it's being developed. We have the expertise, like you said, with design, and it's just the pieces need to come together. We need to coordinate. We need to have the right regulators who are willing to regulate, willing to license the technology. We need to have the right advocates in the White House, in the right spaces, writing the executive orders that bring these things together. I think we're disjointed, but we have all the pieces. Everything is there. We just need to play the right hand in the right way.
Thank you very much. John Konrad, gCaptain, you get the last word to my last question, then we'll go to the audience.
Well, I think the most important thing, and if at one takeaway I was just on Wall Street telling them, everyone wants to get rid of tariffs and remove barriers, and they're upset about these different things and what the Navy and other people are doing. For decades, how you profit in the maritime world and in trade is very linear. Step 1, 2, 3, bigger ships, bigger ports, get more investment, bigger dollars, less trade lanes, more. And our academic systems have really been in that. Study these courses, take these APs, get the SAT, study this amount, and you can go to a great school, because linear worked. But now the enemy gets a vote. China, Russia, Iran has voted against linearity. So we are going into a world of complexity. And you can't back down from that. You can't put that back in. So we need to invite people to the table who think like Elon Musk in a very complex and maneuver around it. And it's really those people, and the hardest problem here is the merchant mariners. We faced this problem in 2013, 14. The number of drill ships working offshore was I think there were 12, and then in 2 years or 3 years, they built up to over 100. And what I kept telling people is we can build, or Korea could, we can in the United States, they can build $1 billion drill ship in a year, but it takes 10 years to develop a captain in order to master that drill ship. You can do the lower ranks, but the chief engineers, the captain, the nuclear engineers, we got to develop those now, and we have to support them now. And we have to protect them in the Red Sea. We have to protect US flagged. We have to look at missile defense on these and bring these guys into the joint conversation. I'm very excited the Navy's giving some combat ribbons to the MSC Mariners.
Yeah.
And
Well
Marad
deserved. Well deserved.
just saying thanks and getting them on board, but you have to, that takes more time than even building a ship, getting that merchant marine base and the shipbuilding base.
Mm-hmm.
And John, I think you ought to be the ambassador to the International Maritime Organization, but
I accept.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a few minutes for questions. This is live audience. If you would, please, sir, take the mic at the center aisle there because you're going to be on tape. And please state your name and ask your question. And if you have a particular guest that you'd like to address the question to, then let us know. Otherwise, Sanjana and John will try to answer it together. Yes, sir.
Hi, is the mic on? Okay, great.
Yes.
I'm Glenn Wright from GMA Tech in Annapolis, Maryland. My question is, the bigger elephant in the room besides 3 Mile Island and Fukushima is the nuclear waste from these small nuclear reactors. Can you address that issue, please?
Sure. So just as a preface, I'm not a nuclear engineer, but the technology is being designed to safely store the spent fuel in a way that would be appropriate. The current model that we're looking at, in particular for floating nuclear power plants and for nuclear powered vessels, is to have a central facility that's responsible for the lifetime of the asset. And so it is where the reactor would be commissioned, and it is where at the end of its lifetime, it would return to be decommissioned, and for all of these aspects, including the fuel, to be handled and taken care of before it continues on. So in particular, one of the floating nuclear power plant design that we're looking at to provide power in marine environments, so that would be for port electrification, for example, or e-fuels production, the floating asset would have a longer lifetime than the reactor. So in our designs, we are seeing that we could take the reactor at the end of its lifetime, separate it from the asset, decommission the reactor independently, retrofit that same platform, and send it to a new destination, to a new location, to continue providing power again. So the answer to your question is in the design of the reactor and in the design of the system, that will be taken care of.
And I think the key word in the acronym SMR is small, so that this will be much less of a challenge than it would be for a much larger plant.
Yes,
with larger
exactly.
components to store until the decay of that fuel was safe to put someplace else. Any other questions from the audience? Sir, would you please take the mic? Go ahead, we'll take you and then Colonel.
Admiral Foggo, Adam Siegel, Insight Through Analysis. If we think about it, there are almost two conflicting issues. If I want efficiency in shipbuilding, give me the same thing repeated time and time. If I want technological innovation, lots of one-offs. If we think about the submarine community, not since the Virginia class and otherwise, but we had the Leonard P. Lipscomb and otherwise, through the community for 30, 40 years, there'd be one-offs to try new reactors, new design, new pumps, etc. If I want to put SMRs aboard ship, I probably want a series of one-offs. As an example, how do we balance that in the Ship Act for the one of, I want 100 of the same thing because I'm going to get incredible efficiencies, versus I want some one-offs so I can address the seizing and maintaining a technological lead?
Yeah, I'll let Sanjana answer that, but I think the one-offs are already underway. Yes. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have a piece of this pie that are experimenting with small modular reactors of various sizes, shapes, and forms that they want to get, obviously they're in business, so they want to sell these things to the United States government for use on, whether it's a data center if you're going to Apple or Silicon Valley, or whether it's on a ship. Over to you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think part of this is the demonstration. There are many reactor designs and currently in the process, different phases of licensing, engaging with regulators. I will say what works so well about nuclear for maritime is that it works in both directions. A significant challenge that the nuclear industry is facing is significant cost overruns to build these large terrestrial plants. The nuclear plants that you're familiar with in the commercial industry, over 80% of those costs are non-nuclear. What's great about small modular and incorporating small modular with commercial shipyards and shipyard manufacturing is you can create this serial production that can mass produce them to meet the need for the actual vessels themselves. So nuclear for maritime works in both directions, and you can demonstrate it, prove that it works, and then mass produce it in the same capacity, using the same skills, a central workforce that is demonstrated with shipbuilding capacity all over the world.
John.
Say something quick. Building big ships, I've built 1,000-foot ships in Korea, is really hard, but we have to lean on what we're really good at. In this country, we are really good at small workboats, private yachts, barges, those smaller vessels, and now you have companies like Saronic and Anduril building out these autonomous small ones, ramping up production. They're not very good about the Indo-Pacific. We can't send a drone over those thousands of miles. But all of these companies competing in nuclear on the small boats, a winner will emerge. And when that winner emerges, we need a big shipyard in order to pull up that design. So we have to support these small guys now, but we have that. So there has to be focus on the big ones. So when the nuclear is ready, the big shipyards will be ready, because those take time to develop.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. And a great point. Thanks for the question, Adam. Do we have one more question? Napoleon? Good, thank you.
It's a great honor to be here. I'm Foggo Defense Cooperation Attaché, Colonel Kim. And this event is very meaningful because during this panel discussion, we mentioned about foreign investment is related with partnership. So we can think about the partnership ways, short-term, mid-term, and long-term. So my question is that currently, considering the urgency of shipbuilding and the current area, what kind of ways we can follow short-term, mid-term, and long-term? Thank you.
Okay, so sense of urgency. Thank you, Napoleon, from South Korea. How do we get there faster, short-term, mid-term, long-term? John, we'll start with you.
There are problems. Working on the SHIPS Act, there are problems that have simple solutions but are politically very difficult, and there are politically easy things like doing modest support for nuclear that have really hard engineering problems. We have to look back through history, and we've solved a lot of this already. Toyota Manufacturing, they built car factories in the United States, and what they did is they brought in Japanese labor and workers to establish the culture and establish the processes that they already knew in Japan. Mm-hmm. And then they trained American workers. That is very difficult to do politically because you have to fix the visa program. We can reflag American ships right now, foreign ships, but we don't have the mariners. So can we have 3-year visas as we ramp up the training? So there are problems, and the interesting thing about the geopolitical mess is as tensions get harder, the political lessons go away. So it's where are we going to reach that tipping point where we put more options like visas and more foreign investment on the table?
Sanjana.
Yeah, I'll just add that I think that outside of the technology, a big part of this in the short term and long term is the regulatory framework surrounding these and the role of governments to provide the necessary support to allow those developments to happen, because these regulators are all going to be US regulators. They need to be the ones who are licensing the technology. And then when you're looking at vessels going into foreign ports, you need to have governments collaborating and working together to help facilitate port entry, especially for the first of a kind, for these first demonstrations, to prove again that these are safe, to demonstrate that they can work well.
Fantastic. And folks, we're right on time. That's a wrap. Thank you to John Konrad and Sanjana Shashikumar for joining Maritime Nation. I'd also like to thank our studio audience and our listeners for joining us each month. If you have not heard our previous episodes, you can always catch up on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Episodes and all content described here today can be found on our website, www.centerformaritimestrategy.org, all lowercase. And thank you to Data Miner for their sponsorship and support. Stay tuned for the next episode of Maritime Nation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral.